All right. Well, it looks like folks are still joining, but let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is Seth Paskin, based out of Austin, Texas. I'm on the technical marketing team for BMC's Digital Service Operations, and welcome to our final Best Practices webinar for calendar year 2018. We've had a great run since July. Thank all of you for participating and for joining in. We're going to end the year on kind of a little happy and fun note. I've got Thad White and Sumeet Hemnani, both of whom are on my team, and we're going to talk about how you can make it look like you're working while you're actually out holiday shopping using automation in your IT operation environment. So we're a little lighthearted today, but it's still a serious subject, and we hope you get something out of it. This will, as I mentioned, conclude the series for the year, and we'll pick it back up again in January, as always. The event calendar is up to date, and we will have the recording for this session posted hopefully by tomorrow in BMC Communities. And with that, I'm going to go on mute and turn it over to Thad White.
Thank you, Seth. Hello, everyone. Welcome to what we've dubbed the holiday edition of the Best Practices webinar, and it's all around automated operations. Something that we forgot to mention, Sumeet is in the background answering questions. So if you have questions, you know the drill, submit them to the Q&A window, and Sumeet will answer them as best you can. If we have any time at the end of this thing, we'll try and answer some live as well. So today's session is all about automated operations and how you can leverage it either for normal work or somewhat dubiously, as we're going to do, to avoid work, which I'll show you in a little bit. I think before we kind of get into, what is event-driven IT automation, there's a couple of terms that you really need to know going in. So one is automation and one is orchestration. And in layman's terms, automation is taking some manual IT operations process and using some tool set to automate that manual process. So an example would be a process on a server dies, and it happens quite frequently, so you create a script to automatically restart it so you don't have to go out there and do all the manual steps to do it, right? Pretty simple to understand. And orchestration is really the process of gluing different workflows or processes together to accomplish some more complex workflow. For example, parsing an event for specific information and passing that information to some automation process that's used in the remediation of that particular issue, right? So event-driven IT automation is the process of integrating automation and or orchestration into IT operations processes to realize all the benefits that go along with that. And I'm not going to cover this slide in any detail, but you can see all of some of the benefits and positive outcomes and such that go along with this automated ops play here. I'm not going to cover this. I'm just going to leave. I wanted you to have this information, so it'll be in the slide where if you request it. So let's go over some best practices here. So event-driven IT automation assumes a certain level of IT operations maturity. I would say that this probably comes after reaching a fairly mature state of event management. So once you have your event management under control, probably the next step is going to automated operations. And so some of the best practices are identifying, these process automation candidates, mostly from your operations events, which is why you have to have a certain level of event management security. So look for things that happen quite frequently. Usually something fairly simple to begin with. That's kind of the third bullet there. Keep it simple at first. And then build your run books based on these events, and don't build them from scratch if you don't have to, right? So there's some customizable out-of-the-box workflows that we provide that you can kind of get an idea of how this thing works and begin building your workflows. Also, another best practice is to update the event notes for every operation that your runbook does, right? And that's kind of a standard practice when developing almost anything, right? Write to a log, write to a log, write to a log. If you're updating the event notes for every operation, it also helps you doing some troubleshooting as you're building this thing. And it gives the person looking at the event an idea of what's going on, especially if this flow takes a little bit of time, they can see where it is in the process of doing the remediation or whatever it's doing for the particular event that's come in. And once your maturity level with automated operations increases, you can begin doing more complex things, right? Like orchestrating this workflow across multiple functional requirements, such as having a flow that opens an incident and or change, relates them together, does the remediation, pulls stuff from the event, right? Basically getting more value out of the tool by leveraging it across multiple functional areas. And then, creating smaller flows that can be reused, right? Make this thing modular. So once you begin creating different components to this thing, so maybe open an incident as a component and make it modular where you can just take that and plug it in different workflows. You can begin building flows faster as you get more mature with the tool. So let's get started looking at a quick flow I'm going to show you guys. And this is an out-of-the-box workflow. And in keeping with best practices, basically the flow is looking for some low-hanging fruit stuff, right? So this is one we provide out of the box. It's a service restart workflow. And keep in mind, this could be a process, could be anything, any flow. But like I said, we're going to start out simple and kind of build on this. So we look for the low-hanging fruit type events, such as process or service down. That's basically the first thing we receive a Windows event. And then the orchestration solution is going to pick up the event and parse it, looking for information, specific information like the host name and what service it is that's gone down, those kind of things. And then it'll start doing its triage, right? So, is the host available? Is the service down? Those kind of things, just doing a little due diligence on its own. And then determining if in fact it can continue with the workflow. And if so, in our case, right, so you could go, again, these are all just kind of pluggable modules, right? In our case, we're going to create an incident and change and relate those together. Or you could go straight to remediating the problem, right? It just depends what your particular flow is. But in this case, we're creating the incident and change, and we're going to relate those together. And then we're going to wait on a change approval here, right? Now, that's, again, something that's configurable. And we do that so that we can demo it. Otherwise, all this stuff would happen in the background, and you wouldn't see anything, right? Which is kind of the purpose of automation. But in order to demo, we need to stop this whole process. And then we're going to start the service, verify that everything's up and running, update the incident and change, and the event will be closed by TSOM. And I showed you this workflow so that you kind of get an idea of what I'm going to be going through, because I'm going to hit it kind of quickly. I have done the first part of this workflow already, so we don't have to wait around for things to happen. So right now we're at the wait on change approval. So let's go ahead and switch over to demo. And you should be seeing my TrueSight Operations console. And I am in the event management section, and what you'll see here, this is the event, right? So I had a Windows firewall service has stopped on a particular Windows server. And what you'll notice right off the bat is that there has been an incident created. But let's drill into this event. And let's switch over to the logs and notes. Remember, one of those best practices, write to the log about what's going on. But you'll see that the orchestration product has picked up this event, right? We're looking for certain types of events. This happens to be one of them. And it knows that it's going to use the service down workflow, right? So he's going to parse the event. And he's going to start the triage process, which he's done. He tells you that remediation is required. So he creates the incident, and he creates a change request, and he relates those two things together. And now he's just awaiting on the change approval. Again, remember, this is a configurable option here. So that we can demo it. If I moved over to the objects area here, he also updated URI here so that we can go directly to the incident. I've already got my ITSM tool open, and you can see the incident here, and you can also see the change request here that was created for this particular guy. So if I go into the change request, and I just move it along, basically says I'm approving it, and say, okay, I'm done at this point. So the workflow is going to continue here. If we go back to the logs and notes area, this may take a few minutes to get going here, and it will. So he'll start posting stuff back in here once he gets going. But again, keep in mind, this is just something very basic and something out of the box that we provide to get you to start thinking about things that you can do in your environment to start getting some of that low-hanging fruit that takes it may not even take a lot of time for you to do, but it may involve one or multiple people, which, you know, when you start adding those things up, we're talking about money over time, which management likes to see disappear from their ledger. So automation is key in that. So you can see that he's launching the process for the task, and he's going to go ahead and finish this out where he'll start the service, and he's going to verify that everything is up and running okay, and then close the incident and close the change request. And there it goes. So he's moving along, right? And again, I don't want to sit here and wait on it, although it probably would only be another 30 seconds to a minute. So let's verify that it did finish. And let's move on here. All right. So once I learned about automation and what can be done with it, I kind of just thought, well, you know, with the holiday season coming up and our last best practice of the year, let's have a little fun with it. You know, the most precious thing for most of us during the month of December is time, right? And not really having enough of it, right? And so since good ideas aren't really my strong suit, I decided to put on a event-driven IT automation flow together that would give me some time back so I could finish my holiday shopping. So I'm not advocating that you do this. It's just something I came up with that's low risk to me that I can get away with that kind of shows some of the realms of possibility with, you know, event-driven IT automation. So I also came up with my own set of best practices around this as well. Let me switch back to a presentation mode here. And you can see that this particular flow has completed successfully. And if we go back, I'm sure the event is probably gone already, and it is. So let's look at my best practices for getting your holiday shopping done. And the flow that I put together that I still need to do some testing on, so maybe you guys can help me out with that. So your holiday work avoidance best practices are find out your boss's schedule. Not necessary that he'd be out of town, but it does help in some situations, right? If you're going to do something like this, it's easier to do if he's not there watching you. Create your exit strategy plan. So what's it going to be? In our case, we're going to do operations outages, right? Because that's where I'm an operations guy. I'm in the data center. I'm having to work, or I'm you know in my office having to work. Need to get some time back for myself. Create your exit strategy. You know, not a family emergency. How many times can grandma actually die? Not an illness. Those types of things. Let's keep it straight up operations. Look for something that won't draw scrutiny later, because remember, you are going to be generating some outages here, not true outages, but it's going to look like an outage. Make friends with the automation and or orchestration person. That's probably going to be key, especially for someone like me that doesn't have a lot of time on that tool. So I'm going to have to go to that person, and with most likely a simple flow, which is what I'm going to do because I can only afford that much. Complex flows probably going to cost me too much money to do. I'm going to build my reputation all through the year for being thorough. It has to be believable of what the things I'm about to do here. And then, you know, dispose of all your evidence when done. If you are caught, my suggestion is deny everything and make some counter accusations. So let's talk about this flow that I'm going to do here. Basically, I'm going to generate an event that's going to be data center centric, which I'm not currently in the data center. I'm in my office. I'm going to assign the event to start the workflow. So I don't want it to, I want to have some control on when this flow starts. I don't want it to just start happening when this particular event comes in. So I've set some parameters around that. It's going to automatically generate an incident, and it's going to start sending emails to my boss to let him know what I'm doing. And then I'm in the testing mode here, so all my emails come in real quick, one right after the other. But I can start adding some delays in this to get my time that I need back to go finish my my Christmas shopping. Then I'm going to close the event, and I'm going to close the incident. So let's go back here to the demonstration. And get back to my console here. So I went ahead and took it a step further and added this flow that's available only to me as my particular login here. It's accessible to me, or can be seen by me, where I can just start this flow from a local action within the console. Right. So if I go over here to demo and say, let's go shopping, that's going to generate my event that orchestration will know about once I send it its direction. So I'm going to say, launch this particular event, and you can see the event's already hitting TrueSight Operations here. So the event that I chose was data center temperatures above 90 degrees. And in some cases, that can be pretty bad, right? That can be a pretty bad thing. And you'll see that it's already generated an incident. So now I have my event, and I need to get that over to orchestration so that it can start doing its job. Now, this is where I put, again, a certain level of control here for me. And again, this is all configurable. I don't send it over there until I assign it to someone. And so what I want to do here is assign this event. And I'll just assign it to most anyone. Assign it to me. And say OK. So basically what that does from a technical perspective is that will propagate this event to another event cell. So those of you that are familiar with that, that's how this product works, is orchestration is sitting looking at his own cell, and any events that come over he's going to look at. If that event matches some specific criteria, then he'll pick that event up and begin doing whatever workflow or automation is required for that particular event. So if we look at this guy and go to his logs and notes, he was assigned. Once he was assigned, then the TrueSight orchestration picked that event up, and he's beginning to do the process. Now remember, I'm sending some email, so here we go. And I'm sending it to my boss, who happens to be Seth. And my first email is, hello, Seth. I'm working on the incident X. And remember, this is a generic flow, so he's picking up that incident, parsing that information, picking that incident up. So letting my boss know I'm going to be working on this particular incident. And then after some time, right, the flow will go ahead and send another incident that says, hey, you know, I need to step away from my desk and head to the data center to look at that sensor. There's the key for me, right? This is where I start really building my time to get out of doing the sticking around the office. So I'm going to go over to the data center. I'm going to check things out, send another event at some point after that, however much time I need. It says, hey, you know, somebody put a cup of coffee next to the sensor, cause it to go haywire, waiting for a few minutes for the sensor to reset. And then the last thing that you'll see is send a last event that says, seems like everything's back to normal, right? But I'm going to go ahead and stay in the data center for some time and just make sure everything's okay. Again, giving myself a little more time. So as I said, it's a pretty fun flow, right? And we can configure this thing to do basically whatever you want it to do. I bought whatever time I need to go out and finish up my shopping. Now, last thing here is that while I was doing this, Sumeet had scheduled a job within orchestration. So it doesn't necessarily have to be based upon an event, right? So this is event driven, and that's what this was about. But Sumeet had scheduled a job on a scheduled basis to go out and do something for us. So you should have received an email at this point if you have been registered for the last few days and supplied your email address that we created to send everyone a holiday event. So if you don't see it in your email, make sure you check your junk folder. or if you signed up late, we may not have had your email address. But that was done using automation as well, just using it a slightly different way where we set up a scheduled job. If we look within the automation tool, I thought I was logged in already. I apologize for that, so you guys have to watch me log in. And wait for my slow connection at the same time. And if we look at schedules, so the schedule's gone because it's executed once, right? But this is where you would add a schedule to say, go do something once and call it done. So give it a name, give it the process that it's going to be doing. In this case, it was send an email, and we gave it the date and time and said, run it once and then be done with it. And so everyone should have that. Seth, are there any questions, burning questions in the Q&A that need to be answered?
There are not. We have a relatively quiet group this morning, today.
Well, that is quiet. Everyone's ready for the holidays.
I guess, yes. So if you would like to ask a question, if you're curious about how much work went into this, or which products we're using, integrations, or what have you, please feel free to enter it in either the chat or the Q&A window. If you would like, I'd be happy to unmute your line if you'd like to do it verbally. I just keep all the lines muted while we have the session going simply because there's so much background noise. Okay, so Rick Bosworth has a question. He's saying, is this TSO plus remedy?
So in both of the flows that, well, in the first flow, what you saw was naturally TrueSight Operations, TrueSight Orchestration, and Remedy ITSM, correct. In the second flow, which was just sending of the emails, it was just TrueSight Operations and TrueSight Orchestration.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Any requested topics for 2019 that we can add to the list? Automating cloud security. Of course, Rick wants us to do automating cloud security. Well, Rick, maybe we can do that in the coming year. We'll get it on the calendar. All right. Well, it looks like everybody's ready to get started with their time off, or maybe attending the webinar was your way of pretending like you were at work and you're actually doing your holiday shopping on Amazon, if not physically in a store. So I'm going to assume that we need no additional follow-up. So we'll post Thad's deck on the communities event along with a link to the recording for this once we get it up and edited. And I hope everybody has a prosperous, happy, and healthy holiday season and New Year. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, a belated Happy Hanukkah, whatever it happens to be. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful end of the year. Okay.